At the beginning of the year, Tubi added a bunch of really fantastic movies. In this video, I'm going to show you all the titles I recommend, but I will spend about a minute per movie telling you about my top 10 hidden gem recommendations. These are movies that are much lesser known that you've probably overlooked. Total bangers too, by the way. In fact, the number 10 movie on this list, my bottom pick, is the newest movie on this list and is the first official Tubi original movie titled The Thicket. But as always, if you don't like watching movies on Tubi, check the top pinned comment. I've also listed the other streaming services currently hosting these exact same titles. Now, this actually got a limited theatrical release just a few months back. It's already available to watch free on Tubi, and it's only available to watch free on Tubi. And it's a good old-fashioned Western. I'll say, fans of Juliette Lewis or Peter Dinklage, you need to see this movie. It's free on Tubi. You don't even have to create an account with Tubi to check out this movie. You just gotta sit through some commercials. But even though the story and the storytelling was a little bit messy, in the sense that it feels kind of like the start of a TV series, a pretty gritty TV series that I would have continued watching, but it felt a little bit loose for the narrative of a movie. That said, Juliette Lewis is playing this Wild Bill character. She's just hardened and grizzled, but she's also having a lot of fun playing a bad guy, kind of the way she did in Natural Born Killers. And then Peter Dinklage is like a bounty hunter. Yes, they address his size multiple times in the movie, but for the most part, he just plays a badass bounty hunter and he's great at it.
You're the littlest man I ever seen.
You're the ugliest.
I'll also say, fans of the comedian Andrew Schulz, he plays a pimp in this movie. He's only really got one scene. It's pretty fantastic. I can't tell if I liked it because I'm a fan of his or if I liked it because he actually did a really good job. That said though, if you're a fan of his like me, it's at least worth checking out the brothel scene in this movie. Next up, I've got a goofy one starring John Travolta that I think is just kind of criminally overlooked because it's kind of a goofy action movie. From Russia with Love. From Paris with Love, From Russia with Love. Obviously the James Bond movie. But From Paris with Love is a spy flick. Not only that, but it was co-written by Luc Besson, and it's from the same director as District B13, which is a little bit of a deep cut, but it's got some killer action in it, and John Travolta just playing an over-the-top character that's actually pretty fun. This is one of my favorite characters he did after Pulp Fiction. This one stands out as one of those goofy ones he did that's actually really entertaining and lively to watch. But my number 8 pick is even more lively and entertaining. It might be the most lively and entertaining movie on this list, but it is a goofy comedy for people who have a goofy sense of humor like I do. It's titled Barb and Star Visit Vista Del Mar. No, I got that title wrong too. Barb and Star Go to Vista Del Mar.
Okay, you go into the bathroom, I'll lay out our bottoms and tops. You know what we should wear tonight? Our evening culottes.
This stars Kristen Wiig and Annie Momolo as two middle-aged women, straight-laced middle-aged women who decide to cut loose on an all-inclusive vacation. But the movie is so much more complicated and so much weirder than that simple setup. Honestly, this is one, if you're not into it in the first 15 minutes, then it's probably not going to be for you, but I'll say, I think fans of Austin Powers, there's things in there that'll appeal to you. And also, Kristen Wiig's goofier stuff. Like, if you like some of her stuff that's goofier than Bridesmaids, then I think you can have a ton of fun with this one, but it's got such a distinct, comedic style that it's definitely not for everybody. So again, give it 15 minutes if you want a few laughs. If you're not laughing by then the humor in this movie is probably not for you. But I've got another outrageous comedy very close to the number 1 spot on this list.
What number again, please, sir?
6'11".
6'11"? Oh my, Barb. Oh my gosh, he's 6'11". 6'11"? We're in 124.
My next pick is not funny at all, though. It's actually a really dark thriller that comes from Australia titled Red Hill. Now, this is basically a Western, but it's set in modern day, or at least it was set in modern day 15 years ago when the movie released. But you follow a very young police officer on his first day of duty, actually, in a small town when all hell breaks loose. So he's not equipped to deal with any of the problems he's about to face, and it's some heavy stuff rolling into town. Very much in the vein of an old school Western, yet it's, again, set in this modern day Australian town. It's really cool stuff. Pretty dark, but not in the sense that it's going to turn a lot of people off. This is not one that's going to be too dark for most viewers, but it does make for a gritty modern day Western. On top of it being just a pretty slick thriller from Australia that most people have overlooked. I see some of you eyeing this They Live t-shirt. This is actually my second best selling shirt, despite the fact that that movie's not very well known. But my best seller, the St. Nicholas shirt, is back in stock, as well as a whole bunch of other designs over at darrenvandam.com/shop. Check out the link after the episode, or just follow this QR code right now on your phone. It's a great way to help support the show, but also a way to just get some stupidly soft t-shirts that help show off some of the deeper cut movies that you may love, like I do. But speaking of deep cuts, my next pick is actually Deepwater Horizon, which admittedly is probably the most well-known movie on this list. But it also happens to be a banger of a disaster movie and one based on real life. So often these disaster movies are based on false events, and they're kind of silly and over the top, but Deepwater Horizon depicts the BP oil rig disaster in just a harrowing fashion. Yeah, some stuff is maybe a little bit over the top to, make it Hollywood, but for the most part, you're watching this entire disaster take place, and it's all the elements that we missed back in the media. The story was all about these gallons and gallons of oil dumping into the ocean every second for weeks on end. But that huge story kind of distracted from the actual explosion and disaster event, which was so harrowing. And it's wild to watch it on screen. This is actually from Peter Berg, the same director as Lone Survivor and Patriots Day, both with Mark Wahlberg, and I think the guy just does a bang-up job of depicting these real-life disasters. Again, they're very Hollywood, but also feel pretty raw and realistic at the same time. Deepwater Horizon just being an excellent example that I think has been quickly forgotten with time. Another movie that was seemingly quickly forgotten is the latest Predator movie, which is also one of the best since the original. It's titled Prey. This is a Hulu original movie, and it has been solely on Hulu for the past couple of years. It just got added to Tubi, so if you've missed it, it's now your chance to watch it for free, and I'm telling you, it is a banger. The reason this movie works for me is it goes back to the basics of the original. You actually follow a young warrior in the Comanche Nation who faces off against one predator out in the wild, and the predator is not even the only predator she faces off with in this movie. It's from the same director as 10 Cloverfield Lane, another smaller movie I really liked, and he's currently working on a sequel to Prey titled Predator Badlands. It'll actually come out later this year. As someone who absolutely loves the original Predator, thinks the sequel with Danny Glover is pretty okay, and even thinks Predators was a pretty fun movie, but has not really liked any of the other spin-offs or sequels, I was pleasantly surprised with Prey, and I highly recommend it for Predator fans. My number 4 pick is a prison flick I have highly recommended for years, but to my knowledge, it might be its first time on Tubi, even though it's the perfect place for it to be. Shot Caller.
So you gotta stand up for yourself, because once you're marked in there, move! It will never end.
Now this actually stars Nicola Coster-Waldau, who most of you know as Jaime Lannister. He plays a straight-laced guy who gets thrown in the slammer and gradually becomes a pardoned criminal on the inside. Not only is he fantastic, but the movie has just got a stacked cast. A lot of TV actors, but fantastic ones, and they're all doing really great work. And you end up with a totally badass prison flick. I mean, honestly, if you like that genre at all, or even reality shows like Lockup, Shot Caller is one of the best in that genre released in the past probably 20 years. Alright, I told you I had another outrageous comedy on this list. It's one I've seen a bunch of times and I absolutely love, and it also stars the star of my #1 selling shirt, which I definitely should have worn for this episode, The Unbearable Weight of Massive Talent.
Nick Cage.
Now, if you're a fan of Nicolas Cage in any way, shape, or form, even if you're just a fan of some of his bigger action movies, it is so fun to watch him play this really self-deprecating role. I mean, he's playing sort of the pop culture version of himself, the zeitgeist version, the neurotic kind of version of Nicolas Cage. Probably not at all what he's really like, but he does lean into it, you know, the way that he's kind of perceived publicly, and it's fantastic. Not only is he funny, but Pedro Pascal is his buddy in this movie, and it turns into a classic buddy comedy. Think movies like Dumb and Dumber, Trains, Planes, and Automobiles. It's in that genre, and it is a total blast. There's some action, they get into some crazy hijinks, and everything that happens and unfolds is totally funny, and those guys as a pair, I would kill to watch them in a movie again, and I doubt it'll ever happen. But if you like getting movie recommendations like this, definitely click the subscribe button, maybe even click that bell icon. That way you'll get notified when I release these videos and you won't miss the movies before they're gone, because if you hadn't noticed, things don't stay on streaming services very long anymore, which is why I make new videos like this every single week here on Flick Connection. Then my #2 pick would make a harrowing double feature with Deepwater Horizon. It might be a little too much though to watch these two movies back to back. It too, based on real life events, and depicts them in just the most visceral way in The Impossible. Now this movie revolves around a family in Thailand during the 2004 Indian Ocean tsunami. Naomi Watts and Ewan McGregor are playing the parents, and you got a very young Tom Holland playing one of the boys. He's actually just kind of fantastic in this movie, surprisingly so at a young age, but the way this was filmed is absolutely amazing. Everything looks totally real, and that's because a lot of it is. They built massive sets, flooded insane amounts of water on it, and much of what you're seeing doesn't feel like CGI because it's not. I mean, it's one of the most realistic, if not the most realistic depictions of a flood I think I've ever seen cinematically, and then most of the movie actually takes place amongst the aftermath of this event. I mean, it is just a top-notch drama that is loaded with all the best stuff you could want in a movie, incredible cinematography, performances, and again, it tells a true story in a damn near perfect way. But my #1 pick also tells a true story, but in a much artsier, much more performative way that I think also turns out just pitch perfect in Bronson.
Prison was honestly brilliant. I liked it personally. I loved it. It was exciting. It was on the edge. It was madness at its very best.
Now in this movie, Tom Hardy is playing Charles Bronson. No, not the American actor, the most notorious English criminal of all time. This was a guy who was actually thrown in prison for a pretty minor offense, but just like Shot Caller, he becomes a hardened criminal on the inside and is one of the most vicious criminals, again, in English history. This guy caused so much mayhem on the inside, and not only is Tom Hardy's performance of him like perfectly over the top, but this is also directed by Nicholas Winding Refn, who would go on to do the movie Drive with Ryan Gosling shortly after this. And Tom Hardy did this right before doing Bane, and you can see where he drew some of his insanity from in this movie. This too, just one of the best prison movies released in the last 20 years, which is why it makes the list and my #1 spot. But check out this whopping list. I recommend all of these movies. They're currently free to watch on Tubi. Again, I cannot stress this enough. You do not need to sign up for Tubi. There's no reason not to, but if you don't feel like creating another account, you can literally just open up the app and start watching these movies right away with what I think are limited commercial interruptions. But that is a list. I'll keep making these videos as long as y'all keep watching. Thanks for checking out this special Tubi episode, and you will see me on the next one.